Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this, Guy. I know it's not easy for you to cover the State House and get to the studio, but this type of free-flowing conversation with the callers about the issues of the day, I think is really important in local journalism, and I appreciate the forum that you created.
Thank you. And yeah, it was about an hour and a half ago, you and I were chatting in the State House cafeteria, and I think I said, "Oh, gotta go."
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about how there's a number of bills going back and forth, and there's something happening to our east in New Hampshire, all dealing with when and if and what do you have to do to get your vehicle inspected. And I know that a lot of your callers care about that, are interested in that, and there's a lot of a lot of details that are confusing, and I'm happy to sort any of them out for you, or where we're at, where New Hampshire's at, and what's the future of.
Why don't you fill us in, Matt, on, first of all, Matt, you represent the Vermont fuel dealers. Do I have that right?
And the car dealers and the truck dealers.
Oh, okay. Very good.
I work for the people that sell the vehicles and the people that put fuel in them too.
So you're the vehicle guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what the status quo is right now, and then what's going on in New Hampshire and what people are talking about for Vermont?
Yeah, so we know that every year you got to get a yellow sticker on your car, and that means you've taken it into the shop or the dealership, and they've looked it over and they've determined, yep, this is okay, or they say no, you've got to do this work in order to make it roadworthy, and you pay your fee, you slap the sticker on, and away you go, and you're good for a year. In New Hampshire and about 10 other states, they have said, no, we don't need that anymore. To just do away with it. And that's what the state of New Hampshire has done. And there are some that are advocating for that inside the State House. And it's not a partisan issue. There are some Republicans and Democrats that say, yeah, why don't we get away with inspections? And I think they're reacting to some frustrations from Vermonters who say, listen, I've got a brand new car. There's nothing wrong with it. Why do I need to pay $50 to go get an inspection at the inspection shop just to tell me what I know already to be true? And I can understand that. There's others that say, oh, there's a check engine light went on, but that's related to this other thing that has nothing to do with the safe operation of my vehicle, and that may be true as well, and that might be a point of frustration. However, there's also a good number of people who may not be as savvy as knowing when their car needs to be inspected or when it needs to be maintained. They may not crawl under their chassis to determine whether or not the undercarriage is rotted or rusty, or whether their brakes are working, or even what the tire depth level is. So in those cases, inspections are important, not just for the driver and the vehicle, but also for the passengers and the others on the road. Certainly we don't want accidents because of bald tires and bad brakes. And so what's the balance that we have to strike? And part of the issue, Guy, is related to emissions. So when you get your car inspected, yes, they're making sure that your brakes work and you've got plenty of tread on the tires and your ball joints aren't rusted. But they're also checking your emissions to make sure that nothing's been modified or broken so that you're emitting more pollutants into the atmosphere than originally intended by the manufacturer. And that's part of what's called the state implementation plan to ensure that we meet our air quality standards under the federal EPA guidelines. So if you do away with inspections, as New Hampshire does, you may end up being non-compliant with that EPA rule. So that's number one. Number two, as I said before, if you do away with inspections, there's going to be some universe of vehicles that aren't roadworthy that are on the road, and that worries me as a driver. It worries me as a parent. So what's the balancing act where you can ensure that the emissions are up to par? We're just focusing on safety, and that will be the focus of a big public hearing on Tuesday night, guys. At 5 p.m. at the State House. There'll be a giant public hearing, and I know there'll be people there that say, oh, I got my car fixed and this light won't go off and all these new fancy computers on my cars, and let's just do away with it. And there'll be some certainly sentiment to that. But I think there'll be others that say, listen, you fix a car when the light goes off or when the brakes start to wear, and you are saving costs down the road, and you are reducing the likelihood of an accident or fatality. So I absolutely think there's a balancing act in all this, and the legislature seems to be coalescing on not getting rid of inspections as they did in New Hampshire because of all those safety concerns and emissions concerns, to be coalescing on, let's make sure that the inspections are focused almost entirely on the safety of the vehicle and inhabitants of the vehicles and the others on the road. Let's not think about tint or lights, warning lights. But let's just focus on making sure the car stops when you hit the brake, make sure that the tires have enough tread to be roadworthy, and that it is operating safely. And there are ways you can do that, but it involves the Department of Motor Vehicles streamlining the inspection manual and then communicating that to the 3,000 different inspection stations across Vermont, of which you can take your car to get it checked out.
So, Matt, I was driving down Smuggler's Notch Road, that nice, long, steep road heading into Cambridge. Yeah. And, my pickup truck was making some sort of funny sounds back there, but frankly, I wasn't paying attention. But I did start paying attention when suddenly one of my wheels flew off the car and into a farmer's field where it came to rest about 100 yards away. And my car, as you might imagine, took a sharp turn it basically almost capsized, not quite. And I was all right, the car not so much. And the moral of my story there is, gosh, I probably should have been paying attention to that, but I wasn't. And I'm, frankly, my kids and and my wife at the time were pretty lucky that I didn't die that day.
Yeah.
So I like what you're saying there about let's focus on safety, maybe, and a little bit less on emissions. What do you think about rust? I mean, it seems to me rust is one of the number one things that gets a car taken away. And is that sort of one of those sort of safety, sort of not things, or what do you make of that?
Well, yeah, it depends on where the rust is. If the rust is under your undercarriage, your ball joint, your car might come apart. If it's a quarter panel, no big deal, right?
Yeah.
If it's on your brakes, there's a definition currently, which is if the brakes are pitted, the rotors are pitted with rust, then it is in fact those brakes need to be replaced under the inspection manual currently. If they are just surface rust, that orange tint that you might see when you take your wheel off, or you can see sometimes through the hubcap, then that's supposed to get a pass. Now, that's the newish version of the inspection manual in terms of rust on your brakes or rust on your rotors. The old way they used to do it is just have the mechanic hop in the car and see if they can come to a stop at the right time. I mean, that's another way to test it, which doesn't deal with looking at rust. But it is somewhat subjective, certainly. But as a consumer, I certainly want to know, hey, how are my brakes doing? Are they worked? Are they rusted? What's my timeline here? And going in and getting an inspection every year is a way to do that. Then there are, you don't have to just use one. There are 3,000 inspection stations across Vermont, all supposed to be following the same inspection manual. So if you certainly you're able to get a second opinion if you want one, and I've done that myself.
Unfortunately, I do not have a brother-in-law who runs a safety inspection. Yeah. So, actually, more of a question that a legislator might end up asking you is, are there any really reliable, nonpartisan statistical reports on whether inspections really do reduce the amount of accidents and problems and driving problems on the road? I mean, do they work?
Yeah, that's an interesting data point to get. I mean, because you can certainly have anecdotal information on both sides of this debate, which is an individual who just got a new car and said, why do I need an inspection? It's brand new, versus someone who's driving around a rust bucket with bald tires and no brakes and saying, yeah, maybe they definitely need to bring that car into the shop or to scrap it. And you could have examples on both sides, but in terms of data, whether or not there's more or less, I think part of it too, though, from a consumer point of view, you look at getting your brakes replaced and you're looking at that bill going, oh boy. But, not having brakes or letting them go longer, you could be looking at a much higher bill than routine maintenance. Routine maintenance, of course, we all know this. We try to follow this, but we're not all perfect. routine maintenance saves you bigger expenses down the line, whether you're talking about your heating equipment or your car or anything that is used extensively. Routine maintenance is always a way to increase the longevity of whatever you're driving or whatever you're using. And but not all of us follow it. Not all of us keep up to date, and that's really what the inspection is supposed to do. If you don't do your routine maintenance, that's supposed to be the check. Whether it should be every year, every other year, whether you should focus on 6 things rather than 50 things. That all will come out, I believe, in the next couple of weeks as they discuss whether or not, or how to change, or if to change, how we inspect our vehicles in Vermont.
So when is this public hearing? When and where is this public hearing?
It's tentatively scheduled for, and I'll have more updates for you on Friday, but it's tentatively scheduled Tuesday evening to discuss, in the State House, to discuss inspections and whether or not, what to change in the inspection manual. You talk to anyone, and they'll have strong opinions about the frequency of inspections or what should be checked. Should we flunk a car for not having a front license plate? Should you flunk a car for having excessive tint? What should be the standard for determining whether brakes need to be replaced or not? These are all important points, and many people have different opinions on them, and they'll be free to express them at this public hearing. Stay tuned, and I'm sure you'll put it in the Chronicle and let viewers know.
Yes. So will this be both the House and Senate Transportation Committees will be doing this?
I'm not sure. I can tell you that the discussion has mostly taken place in Senate Transportation, but there are bills in both the House and the Senate that would either change the frequency, streamline the inspection manual, and there's some that would just eliminate them entirely.
Yeah. Folks, if you have a question for Matt Cota, 802-244-1777. My name is Guy Page. I'm the host here of Hot Off the Press. So, Matt, New Hampshire, not that we have to do what New Hampshire does, even though they're more prosperous and less regulated than we are. Why have they gotten rid of? What was sort of their rationale, and how's it?
Well, their motto's right on their license plate, isn't it, Guy?
Right.
I mean, yes, you're right about New Hampshire. They do a lot of things that are sort of even though we call them the upside down Vermont, and they probably call it the upside down New Hampshire. There are a lot of things that they do are quite different than we are in Vermont. And one of the policies that came out of the assembly over there in Concord last year was to say that no, we don't need to do these inspections anymore. Then what happened? Well, then what happened is there was a lawsuit assuming that when you do an inspection, you're checking for safety, but you're also checking for emissions, and emissions is what is required in order to ensure you're in compliance with your EPA-sanctioned state implementation plan to ensure that you're not putting too much particulate matter into the atmosphere out of the tailpipe. And so a federal court stopped that and said, "No, wait a minute, you still have to do inspections because we need to make sure you're in compliance." And then the Attorney General said, "Nope, we're doing away with it." So it's been from way above. New Hampshire has made a decision that they don't care, or they're not concerned about potential lawsuits with not following their state implementation plan in terms of ensuring that their emissions are in check. And there's no longer a requirement that they inspect light-duty vehicles. Now, they still have to inspect commercial vehicles, those trucks on the road that carry goods around the state. Those are governed by federal regulations, and those still have to be inspected. But in terms of light-duty vehicles, New Hampshire is now one of about a dozen states that no longer requires it. In Vermont, could they go that path? Could they go to biannual inspections every other year? Could they go to inspections every year, but a very shorter list of boxes to check for the mechanics? All that is possible. All that will be determined over the next 2 months.
Well, Matt Cota, thank you very much. Thank you very much for calling in on Hot Off the Press. I hope to have you on again soon, and you can give us maybe a quick update, not right now because you only have about 30 seconds, but on sort of where's our climate legislation going, because you have absolutely been a leader in terms of being a source of information and an advocate in that area. So we look forward to having you on again very soon and on Hot Off the Press.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, Matt.